Good morning, all, and welcome to this week's episode of the CEO Momcast. Again, this week we're doing something a little bit different with our looming election on November 5th. I thought we would take a minute and talk to somebody who is really into advocacy, is out there on the platform, promoting conservative views, business, and really getting back into the traditional family life and promoting that, which is something that we haven't seen for quite a while in this generation. So, Kendall, I'm going to hand it off to you. Let us tell you a little bit about yourself and how you got started on this journey.
Let's see, I've been doing Instagram for about 4 years now. I was not on the social media scene at all. Actually, I had followers on Facebook. And at one point I went through and I got rid of like everybody. And it was during an election season. So I got rid of like anybody who didn't agree with me politically. I just got rid of people. And I'm like, I'm going to live a really private life. And then COVID hit. And I thought I can't sit by and watch all of this nonsense happen. And so I started getting out there and I went to our state capitol in Kentucky and I basically arranged a group of people to go there and say that we weren't going to be masking our children. We weren't going to be giving them an experimental vaccine. I wasn't going to lend my children as guinea pigs to these people. And it got some leeway. And then during the March for Life, Fox News and Newsmax picked up on my story where I was diagnosed with cancer. And the night before, we found out that I was pregnant, and navigating between choosing an abortion and not. And I shared that story, and really, it just took off on my social media.
Okay, so this has all been in the last 4 years.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, maybe last 5 years, 4 or 5 years. Oh my gosh, how
Wow.
long has it been since COVID?
I know, right?
And like
I
yeah,
work in healthcare and we literally talk about it like it was a decade ago. Like it doesn't.
honestly, it feels like forever ago. And then in the same breath, I'm like, it feels like it was yesterday.
Right. And I guess I think the scariest thing is like it still hasn't gone away,
It still
you
hasn't
know?
gone away. It baffles me that we walk through the grocery store and there are people who are still wearing masks. And
Yes.
we know that it wasn't a thing. We know that masks don't work. They even came out and said that masks don't work. Our federal government came out and said that, and yet people still wear them. And I was talking to my husband yesterday, like, is the mask, is that their version of a MAGA hat? And will they just never go away because that's them virtue signaling who they're voting for?
Hmm. I've never really thought about it in that perspective, but you're kind of right? Because like
Yeah,
Bernie Sanders was that face of it for the longest time with his mask on, and it's
totally.
never really gone anywhere.
Yes, I know. I mean, I'd love to go up to one of these people. I really should at some point and just politely ask, how long are you planning on wearing it for? And why do you wear it? Because I can't imagine that these science-based people would really believe that something that you can inhale a cigarette, put on a mask, and exhale a cigarette, and the fumes will come out of the mask, and you're telling me that that is protecting you from a disease. I mean, it's baffling. And these are the same people who I didn't see anybody wearing masks during, flu season over the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I don't know if it's just like a comfort measure for people now, especially with me being in the hospitals every day. And I do
Yeah.
have to admit that I can be just as guilty of it when you have a patient coming in like hacking disgustingly and everything. You're like, I better put that mask and gloves on.
Well, and
And
that
it's
makes
almost
sense
like
because
one of
I'm like,
those
if they're
protective
hacking,
mechanisms.
totally, totally.
So that kind of answered my next question then as to what came first, the advocacy or the business owner. Did you own a business prior to this, or did Pretty Little Patriot spawn from this?
No, I was a stay-at-home mom. I loved being a stay-at-home mom. I remember people asking me, when are you going to go back to work? And I'm like, never. I love being in this space. I love taking care of my home. And um, when my husband would come home from work, I would have the house clean and the kids would be happy. But God had other plans. I was at a Turning Point event with my best friend, Lindsay, and we were both kind of political influencers at the time. This is when we had a smaller following, but we still had a large, pretty decent size. And
Mhm.
we both had said, where do people go to buy fashion, get cute outfits for things like this, and not support woke ideology, not have our money going towards the Democratic campaigns or to BLM or to abortion? And there really wasn't anything. I mean, you think of Target and you think of Amazon, and those are clearly peddling your money to the left. So we were sitting at a cocktail table. We grabbed a cocktail napkin and we wrote down an XX, which became our logo, and that represents the XX chromosomes that God exclusively and intentionally only gave to his daughters. And we had this beautiful brand come of it. And I will say over the last 6 months, it's really taken off. It was a year old in September, but over the last 6 months, it really took off. We completely changed our branding. We did a lot to the company, and it's been such a blessing.
I have to admit that in general, even outside of Pretty Little Patriot, you are seeing so many stores pop up with the same values. I
Yes, and
think
I
like
will say that is the one,
2024.
yeah, that's the one positive that came from COVID, right? I mean, we all
Right.
realized we don't have to give our money to these large corporations who are supporting these things. There are so many incredible small businesses who stand on their principles and who stand on their values. And I think it's wild to see. So it's one thing, Lindsay and I came out with Pretty Little Patriot, and that was our whole thing was, we're standing on our morals and values. But it's wild to me that these big corporations, starting most famously with Budweiser, would come out and kind of ostracize an entire group of people. And, basically give the reins of their company over to Dylan Mulvaney, who is doing woman face, mocking women. And to me, like, you weren't missing out on that group of people before.
Right.
And so, but now that you're saying, this is what we stand on, it really is, I can't think of another word, embarrassing for the corporations. And I think it's lost them a lot of money.
I think it's crazy from a marketing point of view to do something like that for any business, with the social media era that we live in. It's totally unforgiving. It is
It
not
really is. I feel like
something that will
if
ever be
you,
forgotten.
again, if you, Budweiser, for example, if you make beer and focus on that and make it
Right.
for everybody. But to stand on this one principle when you never have done that, that wasn't what your company was founded on. I mean, it's truly shooting yourself in the foot. You've now ostracized an entire group of people who, especially for Budweiser, I don't think people will go back. I wasn't a big supporter
No.
in the first place. I'm not a big fan of their beer, but now I will never support them.
Right. And I don't, that's why I say it's crazy for them as a marketing strategy to not realize that they were going to lose business over this. So many large businesses over the past year or two are making these teeny, oh, that one wasn't teeny, but tiny mistakes, and it's blowing up on them because they're not realizing the repercussion and the power that people in social media have these days. It's
Absolutely. I mean, you do one thing and it is seen by millions. It was like when
right.
Target decided to put these onesies out. Um, I remember walking into a Target and my reel went viral. This was a little bit ago, a couple years ago, when Target really put their foot out there and had these onesies for children, and they had the tucking underwear and they had the tucking bathing suits. And for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, it's bathing suits and underwear for little boys to tuck their 10-15s into. So they appear to have female parts, and it's disgusting. And it's for ages, literally birth up until middle school and high school. And I remember my reel went so viral, and then people just right and left started going into Targets to see for themselves what's going on, and it was disgusting. And yet you still have people who continue to support Target. And it's baffling to me. And these are the same people who will also go grab a Starbucks on the way to do their Target shopping. I don't know if people don't realize that Starbucks supports abortion or that they just don't care. But you really will see a line drawn in the sand of people who are truly voting on their values and morals and people who just don't care.
No, I do have to admit that that bit about Target is, or not Target, Starbucks was something that I didn't know. Is this something that is readily available online?
It is readily available. You can
Okay.
see their tax documents where
Okay.
they have donated to Planned Parenthood and to other organizations. So I feel like, again, there are so many different coffee shops that you can support. And truly, when I see people come into my church who are holding Starbucks, I mean, it just gives me the willies because when you know that information, it's like
Right.
you can't unsee it. And now I will
Right.
never give any of my money to Starbucks.
Okay. Um, do you think part of this is that yes, Target, Starbucks, Walmart are such huge companies, and we've gotten into such a consumer state of mind and that fast, easy shopping, that it's become hard for people to find the better places to shop or to know what their options are to not
Yeah, I
support these
think it's a
businesses.
mix between that and just truly just habit. I mean, people are
Okay.
so used to dropping the kids off at school, grabbing a Starbucks, going to Target.
Right,
I mean, I'm guilty of going on Amazon so readily. It's so easy to go onto Amazon. I've tried
right.
to kind of readjust and go on to platforms like my Freedom Cart. And that's where I get all of my makeup or my household items or like protein bars. So my thing is, everybody needs to just be doing the best with what they have. And so, yes, I go on Amazon occasionally, but anytime that I can avoid places like that, I really try to because I do want to make sure that my money is going towards things that align with my morals and values. Because this, in my mind, this isn't a right and a left and a Democrat versus Republican. This is truly good versus evil. And I want to be funding my money in the same way when I donate to my church. I know where that money is going to. I want to do the same with how I spend on a regular basis.
I love how you explain that because I think that that is an issue for everybody. They kind of had the all or nothing mentality, but it's
Right.
literally about doing the best you can, especially with the economy that we have. Yes, sometimes it is cheaper to run into Walmart and grab the few things that you need rather than wait a few days for it to come. But it's doesn't have to be the everyday habit.
Exactly. I feel like when, I mean, I am persecuted online when people will be like, oh my gosh, you're in a Walmart right now. It's like, you have to be realistic. I cannot
Right.
do all of my shopping on, we just don't have a big enough platform for it yet. I
No.
feel like we don't have a Walmart that is my Freedom Cart style. So until we get that, yes, do the best with what you have.
Right. Okay. And so when you started Pretty Little Patriot, did you expect it to blow up the way it did?
I think in some sense it was a like a steady crawl. We actually had another business partner. There were three of us when we initially started it, and about 6 months in, she stepped away. She discovered that she was pregnant and was just it, the stress of the company was too much. She stepped away, and that's when Lindsay and and we weren't doing well. Honestly, we were not doing well as a business, and so when she stepped away, Lindsay and I reevaluated the whole company and we rebranded everything. We selected different clothes. We got a different marketing manager. We got someone to redo the whole website. And so I would have to say for anybody out there who's building a business and wants overnight success, that's generally not how it goes. I mean, even
Mhm.
Michael Seifert, who is the founder and owner of Public Square, I remember him saying there was a moment when they had like close to nothing in the bank account, but they kept going.
Mhm.
And I think when you hit those low points is when faith kicks in and you remember that God brought you to this point. He put this idea in our hearts and our minds. And so once we laid it back into his arms and kind of took it away from us, we did start doing incredibly well. And we started using our network and using influencers that we knew to promote our brand. And then it really took off.
That's great to hear because I think that that's something that we're seeing a comeback in this year is smaller and American-based businesses, and people are really putting the effort in and sharing the word because that's the only way it's going to get out there. Like you said, there is no platform like Amazon for all these small businesses. And
Right.
unfortunately, some of them do have to start selling through there to get their product out there.
Right.
Um, but it's kind of a means to an end, which hopefully they can get away from. But yeah, I mean, overnight success is not given for anything because even if you hear from the founders of big businesses, it took more than a minute. They failed
It
first
did. It
before they
takes a long
succeeded.
time. And yeah, I mean, you have investors or you don't have investors, or you have this idea and no one believes in you, but you believe in yourself. I mean, there was a story even of Kendra Scott, who, I mean, how many no's she heard until she heard a yes.
Mhm.
And you just have to keep pushing. And it's that perseverance that when you do that, in the end, you feel so fulfilled. It wasn't just given to you on on a silver platter. And I think so many people think that Pretty Little Patriot has done so well because Lindsay and I have huge platforms, but it is a lot of work.
Right.
And we still are not taking a paycheck. We're just taking everything that we earn and putting it back into the business. So As glamorous as it looks like on the outside, running a business is hard work. It is really hard work, but it is very rewarding.
Now, we've talked about the American aspect of it. Are you promoting solely American brands, or are you having to have manufacturers overseas?
No, so Lindsay and I went into this knowing that being all American made is just wasn't going to work for our business
Right.
platform, our business model. We're targeting women who are stay-at-home moms, the Christian space, and we wanted our pieces to be affordable. And that's such a relative term in this economy because even something that is, a $50 shirt, that is not affordable to a lot of people. And for American made, it's more like 70 and $80. So we do have vendors who are in America. We have vendors who are all over the world though.
Okay.
And whenever we can find a United States vendor, we will absolutely go with them over China. But price is really important to us.
Of course. Um, so we touched a little bit on your battle with cancer when you found out
Mm.
that you were pregnant. Was this kind of a turning point for you, realizing that pro-life wasn't necessarily aligned with the healthcare system?
Meaning what?
Meaning, not that you weren't conscious of it beforehand, but because you were put into that situation where you had to decide, did you
Mhm.
realize, like, the support systems weren't there, the health system was not advocating for it, and was this kind of a turning point for you where you were like, "I need to be more vocal about this?"
Yeah, I mean, I've said I grew up in a very conservative household. My mom served on the Reagan administration. From a very young age, we discussed life inside the womb, and so all of my life, that's all I've known is that a life is formed, in at conception, and it's valuable. And God knew all the hairs that He put on our head, and He knew us before He formed us in our mother's womb. But when I was diagnosed with cancer, thankfully, I had an incredible doctor who. So basically, the story goes: I discovered that I had cancer. The night before surgery, my husband brings home a pregnancy test. And he says, "You're pregnant." I'm like, this is the 1 month we can't be. But he said, you've been getting up and going to the bathroom in the middle of the night. You did this with our son, Jack. And then I did it right before I had our baby that we miscarried. I was doing that a lot too. Took the pregnancy test. I didn't even look at it because I genuinely thought there's no way. Tucked my son in, came back down. Sure enough, we're pregnant. I got on the phone with my anesthesiologist and my doctor, who thankfully were very for me and very for my baby. And they said, we can adjust anesthesia to make sure that you and baby are safe. And so that was the first thing, because I think in a lot of situations, some doctors would say, well, let's just abort. You're early enough on. Whereas I had a doctor who said, we can adjust anesthesia. Let's try to focus on your health and baby's simultaneously. It's when I wake up from a full thyroidectomy that I'm told that my cancer has spread and that I'll need radiation. And let me also go back and say that my surgeon and his nurses laid hands on me and prayed over me before they rolled me back into the surgery room, into the operating room. God was in that room, and I know that He was going to use my story as a testimony. And He truly made beauty from ashes. So we just, we're given this choice. Okay, well, now you're in the place where truly cancer has spread. Um, you can either abort your baby and focus on your health, or you can delay treatment and risk your health. And we decided, again, I mean, that is God's voice playing in the back of my mind, that she is fearfully and wonderfully made. God created me for such a moment as this. And we chose to carry Presley full term. I gave birth to her, beautiful baby girl, healthy. And then I wanted to breastfeed her. And if you have any breast milk in your body, the radiation will attack that instead of the cancer. So I breastfed her for 2 months. And then I went through a process of getting rid of all the breast milk in my body. And at month 3, because that takes about a month, at month 3, I did radiation and I'm cancer free today. I'm so thankful. But I will say I had an incredible support group around me. I had family, I had friends, I had a church group, and I had my doctors who were advocating for me and baby. And if I didn't have all of that, and if I didn't have, the upbringing that I had, how easy would it have been to just say, you can abort your baby? But let me remind people, that if I had aborted my baby, I would still have cancer. I would just now be able to treat my cancer in a way that it doesn't affect the baby. So, in no way is there ever a situation when an abortion saves a life. It always takes a life. And in my mind, there's so many things that you can do to life-saving measures would be, okay, we're going to try to, do surgery to get rid of the cancer. And then maybe you do try to do other things. But abortion always takes a life. And the time in which a child is conceived does not determine his or her right to life. And I didn't feel like my child was any less valuable being inside my womb versus me holding her in my arms.
Correct. That's a conversation we've even had with our kids. I mean, luckily they go to a faith-based school, so it is something that is very important and try to keep them off of social media and all these things that they can see. Because we are expecting our third child. So it's been a process for our older two because they don't know anything about this. So we've been very straightforward. And, the conversation did come up when, when is it a baby? Well, it's been a baby
Mhm.
since we found out it was there. It's never not been a baby.
Yeah.
And so that's been a great thing for our kids, hearing the heartbeat. Yes, it has a heartbeat, therefore it
Mhm.
is a baby. And I think that we, as a society, kind of lack that education.
I think
And
it
then our
really is all
kids
about the
grow up
education.
not knowing.
Right. And I think instead of talking about the value of the baby and the value of the family unit, we often run to abortion as this
Mhm.
quick fix. But we don't talk about the devastating trauma that an abortion can do to someone. I mean, you have one, and then that baby's birthday comes around, and you don't have that baby with you, and that almost reopens the wound. And just carrying around that heavy weight that you took a life. And we don't say that enough, I think, because it's really hard to say, it's hard to
Mhm.
stomach. But when you have an abortion, you're murdering a life. And I will also say, if you've had one, God is full of grace and he is full of forgiveness and love, and he has already forgiven you for that. Um, and I think to just go about your day, I would love to see people like my business partner, Lindsay, who had an abortion, but she has made something incredible of it. She feels like I had this, but if I don't tell the world about it, then if it's a missed opportunity. Now she goes around and talks to people about the hurt that comes from that and the damage that it did to her and how God has forgiven her. And she can really witness to people in a way that I can't.
I think that's amazing. And I think that that's something that a lot of people have a misconception about Christians and their values. They kind of think that we're on this pedestal of, holier art thou. And that's not the case. We do make mistakes and we've done things that, now we would never do in that
Mhm.
same situation, but we've realized that and we've changed our ways.
Absolutely. And I think if anything for Christians, I mean, so many people think, well, once you've been baptized, you have this beautiful, flawless life. And if anything, I think it's the complete opposite. I
Right.
think if you are away from God, Satan's like, I already have you in my grasp. And so he kind of lets you be. But when you are walking in the will of God, of the Lord, then you have spiritual beings attacking you constantly because they know that you are going to do big things for his kingdom.
See, these conversations are great to have. People don't have them often enough, and they're too easy to go, yeah, God's there. He's watching us all the time. He's on our shoulder, but it's not, it's all the little pieces that go with it.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
let's just pivot a little bit here. Um, let's talk about We the Studio, something that's new,
Let's do
popped
it.
up
Yeah.
as soon as I saw it when you were sharing it. Where did this idea come from?
It's incredible. So Kara and Curtis Leopardo were a part of Hollywood and they left. There's so much corruption happening there. We've seen so many stories come out with everything with Nickelodeon and all of these child stars with Justin Bieber. And they also felt like there's not a TV program when you can turn it on and your kids walk into the room and you're not fearful that a commercial is going to come on for, RuPaul's Drag Race, or that there's going to be foul language, or that you're going to see, two men or two women making out. they wanted to uplift the nuclear family and make people look good on TV, which is it's so wild. But I feel like with all these reality TV shows, it's like the worse and the more messed up your life is, the more airtime that you get. So this is the first ever non-woke streaming service, We the Studios. You can download the app and it's $17.76, 17.76 um, for the year, and you can watch their original content. They have Tito Ortiz versus Sea Monsters, so that's a fishing show that they have. They have Raising Reynolds, which is an incredible, fun, wholesome TV show about a family who is a white couple who is raising these beautiful adopted Black children in Kentucky. And then there is Super Influencer. Lindsay and I are both on that, but it just kind of goes through the day in the life of an influencer on social media. And then we have a cooking show. So lots of new things in the works too. But yeah, a great place to get wholesome TV that you can watch with your family.
Um, so new, I know I said because it's just been out for a couple months. I see there's a
Mhm.
couple coming soon. How is it going? I see that you're the casting director. Are you getting lots of requests with shows ideas for people to be on shows?
Yeah, I mean, there again, so many people want to step away from Hollywood, whether it's the actors or even people in film crew who are tired of covering up dirty behind the scenes secrets and they want to be part of wholesome networking. So yes, it's going very well. We've done a lot of press on it, a lot of media on it. And I will say, when oftentimes when you think of like a Christian TV show or a wholesome TV show, it can be really cheesy. And I will say nothing about We the Studios is cheesy. This is top-notch production and film crews, and it is absolutely incredible.
Okay. I mean, I'm excited. I haven't 100% convinced my husband to get it yet, just because there is only a few show options at this point. We have young kids, so obviously we're looking for something that's more for them.
Yeah.
So I hope that that
They do
content
have
starts to
actually, I'm not
expand.
sure if it's out yet or if it's coming out. I should know this by now, but they do have a kids program, which is really
Okay.
cute too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. Like that's one of our hardest parts as parents. I mean, we can watch things and know with our values that it's not to be taken in or learned from, but it's really hard for kids.
it
And
is.
you know, all these streaming services, Netflix, everything, Disney, you cannot get away from this with your children.
Well, and honestly, even if you watch the actual TV show and if the actual program is okay, you don't realize all the network or all the subliminal messaging that's going into the commercials
Right.
and the ad breaks. It's disgusting. I mean, I love that
Mhm.
my children we like Bluey. I think Bluey is so wholesome. It's the sweetest
Love
show,
it.
but
Yep.
some of the programming that goes in between cuts is
Right.
yucky. And
Hmm.
especially on YouTube, don't think that you're safe on YouTube Kids. That's just
No.
as bad. Um, we got rid of Netflix a long time ago. So yeah, it's hard and we are constantly having to protect our children. But I will say years ago, you could really shield your children from this messaging. But nowadays I just don't think it's possible. I truly think they're going to hear it from somewhere. So in our
Right.
household, we like to talk about these things. I want to be their true north. I talk to my son who's now 12. I think we started having the conversation about sex when he was 10 years old
Hmm.
and talking about what that means and how it is such a beautiful thing when it's done between a husband and a wife um, in marriage and the benefits of that, but then also what can happen when you don't wait. And so I
Right.
think these conversations are necessary to have because they're going to be had whether you put your child in a public school or a private school. These conversations will come up at some point.
Right.
And so we are really open with our kids about what that means. We're open with our kids about when people think that they're a different gender. And we will pray for those people. And I talk to them about how they're hurting and they don't know the love of Jesus and we need to pray for them. So conversations like that, I think, are really great to have with your children.
So do you have your kids in public school, private
We
school?
we do public school, and I will
Okay.
say public school is not for everybody. And I
Right.
actually use my platform to trash a lot of public schools. But we in Kentucky, we are blessed to have a fabulous public school with incredible teachers. The majority of them go to, they go to my church, or I'm
Okay.
aligned with them politically. They know what I do for a living. And so I think it's more, the other thing I say though is if we pull all of these kids out of the public school program, we don't have these little candles, these little lights, these flickers of Jesus in those schools, and then it's completely gone. And so I think what's really important is to equip your kids. And my son has come home to me on multiple occasions and told me, the book fair is in town and these are the kind of books that they're showing, or my teacher said this today and I told him that wasn't true. So I think it's important to have some of those students still in the public school system so we can hold them accountable. And I think it's important for moms and dads to be on the PTO and to be even just volunteering in the classroom. If you don't have time to be on the PTO, totally understandable, but make copies for these teachers. You can, that's simple, that's easy. You can figure out what they're teaching your kids, or go into the classroom and literally cut pieces of paper for them. And then you see what they're really teaching, or go on the field trips.
I think it's great that you said that. That's something that's lacks. A lot of parents send their kids to school. They're there for, 9 to 3:30, so you could go to
Mm-hmm.
work and do your thing. A lot of parents are out of touch with what's going on in school and in the school systems. And that's something that I, as a young parent, had to learn because my first year it was during COVID with a 3-year-old, and
Yeah,
trying to follow the rules, but at the same time reminding myself she's only 3 years old and she really doesn't know better if these teachers are telling her to do things. And I had to create that open communication because they're my kids and nobody's going to stand up for them like me.
absolutely. Yes. I think so often we don't want to ruffle feathers and you don't want to be that parent. Um, but in this culture, you have to be that parent.
Mhm.
And especially when they're young like that, because she can't tell you, they're teaching me the wrong thing. It's just not that
Right.
age. That's more when you get into middle school. And how horrible. I mean, when you look back on sending our kids to school during COVID, or not sending them to school during COVID, I mean, I have so much empathy for these children, mine included, who went through that. Um, what a horrible time. I mean, even I think back, my nieces were in high school and couldn't go to prom, and
Uh,
it just those emotional milestones that you didn't get
right.
to have because of COVID was detrimental.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm that mom and I'm okay with it. My husband kind of stands beside behind sometimes and is just like, I don't know how you do it, but I'm like, if I don't, who else is going to?
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I'm the
I don't
mom
want to
when I
sit
walk into
by
that.
and I refuse to sit by, and in 10 years, my kids are like, my mom just didn't do anything during all of that. I
Right.
want them to know that I fought for them, and whether I was successful or not, I want them to know I fought.
That you tried. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so we talked about your casting for the show and obviously spiraled there with the kids, but that's okay because you know what? Oh, when do we find time to watch TV? It is really about our kids. And
Right.
so it's great to hear that there are children's programs, and I hope that they're going to be expanding with all these.
Yes,
I know
they
it's
will be.
new, it's so hard, but
Yeah.
so when you guys were you part of the planning process of We the Studios, or did you kind of come in after? Because you did mention the two people that started it.
So Karen Curtis are really the ones who are funding all of it, and they're
Okay.
heading all of it. But yes, very early on, I would say Karen Curtis and Lindsay really launched it. And then I was part of the founding, where we were part of the very initial launch, the first shows that ever started, and casting for it. So yes, I've been here from, you know, ground floor, and it's been incredible to watch. And again, incredible to see how anointed it is, because when you're in the Christian conservative space, it can be difficult. And this has been just a blessing.
Now I've seen when I was looking through some of the descriptions of the shows that they're based in different locations in the US. So the
Mm.
studio is kind of mobile right now, doesn't
Yep. Yeah.
okay.
We have a physical studio, but a lot of the shows are filmed. I mean, as far as like the influencer show, um, those that they flew out to Kentucky to see what my life looks like in Kentucky. They flew to Arizona to actually get a grasp of what Lindsay's life is. Flew to Florida to see conservative aunt and how his life is. So it really is. It's been incredible, and I truly feel like it's just the beginning for them.
So you and Lindsay are in two different states and running this
We are in
business.
two different states running
Okay.
Pretty Little Patriot. I'm in Kentucky. Not only are we in two different states, we are in complete different time zones. I mean, she's 3 hours behind me, which is very difficult. But our warehouse for Pretty Little Patriot is in Arizona. So
Okay.
I will go there a couple times a year and visit her, which makes it really fun.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. I love Arizona. I go every year. I need to find a different time of year to go because it's always so hot when I go, but I
Oh,
love it down there.
I love Arizona too. It will never be where I put my roots down, but I love to visit.
Right. That's what my husband says. He's like, it's a desert. I'm like, I
Yeah,
know, but it's so nice.
it is. It's great in the winter.
Yes, yes. I'm fingers crossed. They're trying to move the date of the conference that I always go to November. I'm like, oh, that'd be so much better.
It would be. It'd be great.
Yes. So, um, business-wise in 2024, let's talk a little bit of economy. It's hit everybody hard over the past couple of years, obviously, but 2024, this just
Mm.
seems to be the focus this year. That it's costing the average American like $1,000 more a month just to run their homes. Um, you know, yeah, everybody's getting their little annual wages. It's just not cutting it. What made inflation become this year, and how is it impacting businesses?
The Biden administration, I will wholeheartedly say, has destroyed this country. And I think there are a lot of issues on the ballot right now that people are concerned about, abortion being one of them, open borders being one of them, which are very important topics to me too. But if we can't put gas in our vehicles to drive to work, to make enough money to put food on our tables, then none of that stuff matters. We are supposed to be America, the America that you can just become anything. I mean, people used to be able to come here and have nothing and just become something huge. And
Right.
that's not happening anymore. JD Vance mentioned in the debates how, I mean, the average American family should be able to go out and have dinner. That's just out the window at this point. I mean, even fast food is crazy expensive. I was traveling last week. I got a salad that normally should cost $7. This was a half salad. This wasn't even a whole salad. And it was $11, $12 for a single salad that doesn't include a drink, a side of, piece of bread with it, nothing. We can't do the basic things in this economy, and it's really terrifying. And so when we go to the polls and when we vote, we need to remember all of these other issues aside. Ask yourself, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And if the answer is yes, then call me and tell me what you're doing. And if the answer is no, then you're just like every other American and you need to vote, in my mind, for Donald Trump.
So I'm again glad that you explained it like that because a lot of people think that the platform should be, you know, pro-life or not pro-life and,
Mm.
the open borders or do we close the borders? But like systemically, that is not the issue for the everyday American.
It's not the issue for the everyday American. And again, on my platform, I will be boldly pro-life and you will not change my mind. And I am strongly for build the wall. However, yeah, if those things don't, I mean, if we can't put food on the table for our families, that all goes on the wayside. And to
Right.
me, right now, the most important thing for this election is the economy. And Kamala Harris continues to tell us that on day one or on term one, she has had almost 4 years of day ones. She's currently in the White House. She can be implementing things right now, and yet she chooses not to. And when Tim Walz took the stage and said that, we don't need 4 more years of this, I totally agree with him. We don't need four more
Right.
years of this, and we've already done it with Kamala. So for someone to be voting for her again, I want you to ask yourself, do you hate Donald Trump enough? Or I'm sorry, do you hate him more than an open border, than an empty table because you can't put anything on it as far as food, then you can't put, then all of the inflation, how about record high mortgage rates? Do you hate that? And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to pin us against, you have to hate Donald Trump more than all those things. And really a vote for Kamala is just a vote against against Trump and mean tweets, and I'll take a mean tweet any day. I will say the man doesn't always have the most political savvy, but he can run this country like a boss. And I was better off
Right.
under his administration than I am today.
It's so great to hear that. And social media, mainstream media obviously skews a lot of things. You see the little snippets of people saying things taken out of context. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what's going on. I don't know if it's happening with things that you're saying or doing on social media, but the context really counts.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just it. People are not looking at it in that sense. It's, do you hate one person so much that you can't get behind their political beliefs?
Yeah.
Because it's not him as a person that we're
Right. I mean,
voting
we're
for.
not asking you to be friends with this individual. I mean,
No.
there's so many people that, well, Tim Walz also said in the debate that, he ended his closing statement saying that Kamala Harris is something about how she's so joyful and she's doing politics of joy. And I don't think of that as a term that I would use when I'm thinking of a president. I don't think when you're going up against other foreign leaders that I want you to be joyful. I want you to be someone who gets stuff done. And I want someone to be a little fearful of my president. And no one is fearful of Kamala Harris. It's just,
No.
and again, this is all everything aside, where I'm not taking a personal hit on this woman, but she is not fit to be the president of the United States of America. And for the women who are saying, I want someone, I want our first female president. I'd love to see a first female president too, but not enough that I would pick someone who's not fit for the job. She is a
Right.
complete DEI hire. I want to wait for the woman who's going to just crush it. But if we pick someone who's just okay, I don't know if we'll ever get a shot at a female president ever again.
That's very true. Now I'm Canadian, was born and raised there before my husband and I moved down here, and we had a Canadian prime minister for a very short period of time. And she ruined it.
Mm-hmm.
She was not the correct candidate, and it's probably been 25, 30 years and it's never happened again. And for as progressive as a country as Canada is, and for all its values and views and what have you, that is shocking. So I can't even
Mm-hmm.
imagine what would happen down here if a situation like that occurred.
Right.
So obviously, we know your thoughts on if things are going to change based on the election. I think we all know it might not happen overnight, but things are definitely going to change depending on who gets in. And I don't need to ask who your candidate is because obviously we know, but let's have fun. And, you know, what do you think the chances are of him winning?
Oh, I think 100% he's going to win. I think it just depends on will there be election interference?
Okay.
Um, I think he won last time, and I just think there was election interference. I think what's going on right now in our country and with these hurricanes is terrifying, because not
Mhm.
only is my heart absolutely breaking for these people who have lost everything, the devastation is crippling. Um, Not only lost, you know, these materialistic things in their home, but actually lost family members, and then
Right.
they're not getting help. Um, but then it makes me wonder, how is this going to affect the election? Are they going to just send out a bunch more ballots, and that's how they're going to seal it? But I think that's something that everybody should look at and consider, that something absolutely could happen. And really, if it's a fair election, you should be able to get the results of the election within a matter of hours, because it's not like everybody votes at one time. There's early
Right.
voting. Um, and so I absolutely think he's going to win. I have faith in that. Um, I just don't know if it's going to be stolen. But I will say, for those of us who are concerned about it, or for people who are truly scared and fearful, remember that regardless of who's in the White House, Jesus Christ is on the throne, and he has already won this war in such a big way. And this is our temporary home. And so, as bad as it's going to get here, which we know it's going to get horrible if you've read the book of Revelation, um, if this is temporary, and we are going to a much better place eternally with the creator of the universe.
I love that you bring that up. My husband, every time something happens, people need to read Revelation. They're just acting like this just happened. It didn't just happen. It's in the book. They said it
It's
was
in the
going to
book. I mean,
happen.
and we are so there. And It's scary and it's really exciting to have a first row seat to such a moment in history.
Right. And I mean, even if you are a non-believer and a supporter of Trump, which I don't think there's very many people that are, um, for everything that he's gone through this year, somebody's got to be sitting there watching him to keep pushing him as far as they are.
Absolutely. I mean, the protection that's over that man
Right.
is beautiful. It
It
really is
is.
beautiful.
Well, Kendall, this has been a great conversation today, enlightening, and it was nice to get the perspective on the election and everything that's going on without the bias, without the little snippets like we talked about. And I think it
Yeah,
gets the fair message out there.
absolutely.
It's, we're voting for the candidate and what they're doing, not the person, and we need to set that hate aside, which I think is very hard these days for a lot of people. But to all my listeners, Kendall in Kentucky, Pretty Little Patriots, Lindsey Graham, they're all on Instagram. All the links are going to be up and you'll be able to get to the website, read all about the businesses. There's also links to We the Studio. So if you are interested in checking out the content, and apparently Kendall's your girl to contact if you have any show ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Contact me and then you can use code Kendall to get a additional discount on We the Studios as well.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Kendall, enjoy the rest of your day. Again, it was so great chatting with you.
Thank you, you too.